I wanted tonight to continue on the theme that I brought up in our last Shabbat earlier this month during the holiday of Hanukkah. I'm going to continue with that theme. And if you remember, the theme was that the holiday of Hanukkah was part of the celebration of light, of the Festival of Lights. The Festival of Lights that actually we borrowed from the pagan civilizations, the pagan nations around and within us, actually. For thousands of years, human beings have been celebrating the Festival of Light at the time of the year that is the darkest, this month, and carried that Festival of Light through the winter solstice that we are marking actually tonight. And it's no mistake, that nation after nation, generation after generation, as fear grew when the days became smaller and the nights longer, the fear of the darkness grew. There was an impulse, a human impulse to bring light around, bonfires, whatever shape those festivals took. And we as Jews, even through the whole time of the first temple, the second temple, continued to celebrate the pagan festivals of light. The rabbis, towards the end of the second temple and in the first 100 years of the Common Era, tried to fight us and our celebrating pagan rituals, pagan holidays. And they realized they couldn't win. That no matter what they said, what they'll do, we were going to continue to celebrate. Because it's such a primal need to do that. And so what they did is they transformed the Festival of Light, the pagan Festival of Light, into the holiday of Hanukkah. They made it Jewish. They made it kosher. Now we could have our own version of the Festival of Lights. And it's everywhere in Torah that we borrow from our pagan neighbors. We borrow their stories. We borrow their code of laws. It's everywhere in Torah. But we don't just borrow the rituals, the holidays, the legislations. We borrow even more than that. This week's Torah portion, Vayechi, is the last Torah portion in the book of Genesis. And is the Torah portion that has Yaakov, Jacob, blessing his 12 sons as he is about to pass away, to die. He begins blessing the 6 sons of Leah, his first wife. And then he blesses the 4 sons of the concubines, Zilpah and Bilhah. And then, saving perhaps the best for last, he blesses the 2 sons of his favorite wife, of Rachel. And they are, with the blessing, imbued now with the duty to carry forward the promise that God made to Abraham. They are now the ones who are going to take that on and pass it on to the next generation until the promise is realized. Now, later in the story, you know, with the book of Exodus beginning, that one of the tribe of Levi, is removed from the count of the 12 because it is given a specific task, which is to be the priests of the nation. In the story, to be ordained as the priests and to be the caretakers of the tabernacle, the traveling temple, through the 40 years of our wandering in the wilderness, and eventually in the temple of Jerusalem. But never fear that we are down to 11. Now, the tribe of Joseph is split into 2 through his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And so the count is back magically at 12. And I have, and I'm sure you have often wondered what this number 12 is about. Because the association we have with number 12, the first thing that comes to mind is, well, it's the 12 months of the year. It's a whole cycle of life. So why? Why 12? Why 12? Now, I don't know if you know this, but up until the Babylonian exile in 586 BCE, the Babylonian armies headed by the general Nebuchadnezzar enter into Jerusalem, burn the first temple down, and capture all the intelligentsia of our nation, our priests, our leaders, and a lot of our people as well, and bring them back with them all the way to Babylon. Up until that moment, there were no names for the months of the year in the Jewish calendar. Just like the days of the week, the months of the year were numbered, not named. Right, the days of the week in the Jewish calendar, up until now, actually, if you go to Israel tomorrow, there's only one day of the week that has a name, which is Shabbat. The other 6 days of the week are called day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and it's day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4 towards Shabbat. But they don't have a name, they just have a number. And in Torah, you know that we didn't have names for the months of the year. We knew the Torah told us to celebrate Passover on the first month of the year. We were to celebrate the sounding of the shofarot and the days of atonement on the 7th month of the year. There was never any name. But once we're in Babylon, we borrow from them their names of their month of the year. So the names that we have today for all the months of the Jewish calendar, they are Babylonian names that we took on, that we adopted as we were there. But we didn't only borrow the names of the year, we borrowed as well the signs of the constellations that they had assigned to each one of these months. The zodiac that they had inherited from their Assyrian ancestry. Now, we gave them Hebrew names, but we kept the signs. And I'm going to share with you some ways that it has come into our tradition. First of all, keep in mind that the Torah itself was finalized, redacted, edited, and compiled together in Babylon. So we'll see together tonight how much of this zodiac, how much of these stories that we stole from Babylon actually came to infuse the stories of the Torah, starting with the 12 sons of Jacob. And I'm going to give you the key to this immediately, so as not to make you wait for the end. Do you remember the story of Joseph? When Joseph is just a teenager and keeps on upsetting his parents and his brothers to the point that they begin to hate him, not his father and his mother, but his brothers begin to hate him so much that down the line they're going to try to kill him, and short of that, going to sell him into slavery. Remember that story of Joseph? The anger that he creates within his siblings comes from telling dreams that he has. And if you remember, one of the dreams that he recalls out loud to everybody is the dream that he says he dreamt of the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowing down to him. The sun, Jacob; the moon, his mother, Rachel; and 11 stars, 11 constellations. right? You start to see how embedded in the Torah the stories that we got from the zodiac of Babylon becomes clearer and clearer. Now, once we got that, then we jump forward to the book of Numbers, chapter 2. The book of Numbers, chapter 2, has Moses setting up the 12 tribes around the tabernacle prior to beginning to march towards the promised land. He takes the 12 tribes and assign them a side around the tabernacle. And I always thought, well, it's 3 tribes on each of the 4 sides. And I always had this image in my head that there were 3 tribes in the front, 3 tribes in the back, 3 tribes in the right, and 3 tribes on the left, and we all marched together, almost like, excuse my, the image here, but like almost like a moving cross. That is not what the Torah is talking about. The Torah is talking about those tribes being each assigned a quadrant around the tabernacle. So I have it here. I have it. It's all color-coded and everything. The eastern quadrant. You have 3 tribes for each quadrant. The eastern quadrant, which is the rising sun. You have the first tribes there. They are Yehuda, Issachar, and Zvulun, which are 3 sons of Leah. In the southern quadrant, you have Reuben and Shimon, the last 2 of Leah, and Gad, the first one of the concubines. Gad is the son of Zilpah. The northern quadrant, we have Dan, Asher, and Naphtali, the last 3 of the sons of the concubines. And in the western quadrant, you have Ephraim, Menashe, and Benjamin, the sons of from Rachel's lineage, which, if you listen carefully, in this order parallels exactly the blessings that Jacob blessed his sons, exactly in that order. Now, there are not 3, 3, 3, 3. They are a circle, they are a wheel that encircles the tabernacle, like spokes of a wheel, like symbolizing the year of the 12th month, like each embodying one of the signs of the zodiac, with the temple, with the tabernacle at the center. Now, I did not know that. I dove into this 2 weeks ago after the last Shabbat services, to be honest, because Diana and I were having a conversation where we had a little glitch, and we were talking about wanting to maybe continue the conversation from 2 weeks ago, and I thought, I'm not going to do what I did for Hanukkah. Let's see what else is there in this week's Torah portion that might connect with the theme of Hanukkah, which was what we borrowed from others. And for the last 2 weeks, I've been deep diving into this. It's been taking over my life. And the reason it's taken over my life is that I grew up Orthodox. And one of the sentences that I've always heard from my teachers is "En mazal leIsrael," which gets translated as, and that was drilled in my head over and over and over again, which gets translated as, there are no connection to constellations or to zodiac or to any of those divining tools that apply to Israel. We don't do that. It's just, as far as we're concerned, that was my teachers in yeshiva and in the Orthodox world. As far as we're concerned, this is avodah zarah. This is idol worshiping. None of that is in Jewish tradition. And here I am, reading book after book, website after website, telling me, "Are you kidding? This has always been a part of us, at least since Babylon." I took some notes. I'm not going to move you through each of the 12 sons. I'm just going to go through 4. Okay? The first month of the year is assigned to Yehuda. Yehuda is the only surviving tribe of the 12 tribes of Israel. We are Yehudim. while the Jewish people, actually Jewish, is the English version of Yehudi. Yehudi becomes Jewish. So we are the descendants of Yehuda, right? As the last tribe standing together with the Kohen and the Levites that were the priests in the temple. But we are all the descendant of Yehuda. Yehuda is the southern kingdom of Israel, is where the temple was. Right? It's the central place in Israel. It's also the lineage through which the kings of Israel come, as well as Messiah will eventually come. Ben David. Messiah Ben David, but King David is through the lineage of Yehuda. Yehuda is spelled Yud He Vav Dalet He. Yehuda is Yud He Vav He plus the Dalet. Yud He Vav He is the transcendent divine name, and the Dalet in Hebrew is the doorway. So his name means the doorway to the transcendent, the doorway to awakening. And that month is connected to the sign of Tle in Hebrew, which is the sign of the ram, Aries, right? Which is directly connected, by the way, to the sacrifice of Isaac by Abraham, right? Which later became the sacrifice of the lamb that is connected to the holiday of Passover, which is the holiday we celebrate in the middle of the month of Nisan, which is the first month of the year, which is Yehuda. It's amazing stuff. Now I'm going to jump ahead and talk about the month of Tishrei. Tishrei is where we have the high holidays, the 7th month of the year, as I mentioned earlier. It's the month of the Moznaim. The Moznaim are the scales, Libra. Of course, it is the month where our good and bad deeds are weighed on the scales in front of the divine throne, who decides whether we are going to be inscribed in the book of life. Libra. The whole zodiac makes so much more sense if you take the Jewish lunar calendar. Why would you have scales in September? You have scales in September because it's the high holidays. It's the month of Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. It's the month of Ephraim. Ephraim, his name is associated with creative energies, to giving birth to new realities, which is the work we are enjoined to do on Rosh Hashanah as the new year begins. Now, I'm going to quote you a midrash. When I found this midrash, my mind went, that's a midrash. What's a midrash? It's a commentary on the Torah by the highest rabbis, the highest sages. Right? Very few get to write their own midrash. And this is the midrash called Pesikta Rabbah. And this midrash says, and the words that I'm going to say now are directly translated from the midrash. I am not inserting any word. Listen up. Libra weighs all the deeds of man. Who if found guilty, is punished by Scorpio, a symbol of Gehinnom. So we're already, moving 1 month, right? Libra into Scorpio, the months follow each other. After purification in mercy, however, he's cast forth as quickly as an arrow from a bow, represented by Sagittarius. And becomes, the next month, and becomes as innocent as a kid, Capricorn, and is purified as by water poured by Aquarius. That's a midrash. That's the quintessential writing of the Jewish tradition. En mazal leIsrael, my rabbis, what were you thinking? Why hide this? Especially to me, come on. I was going to find out one day or another. Speaking of, did you follow this midrash? The rabbi is actually literally moving us from month to month and explaining the process of healing, the process of redemption. Aquarius. Aquarius is connected to the month of Shvat. The month of Shvat is the month where we celebrate Tu B'Shvat. which is the birthday of the trees. Why do we call it the birthday of the trees? The month of Shvat is the month at the end of which the rainy season we know is complete. It's connected to rain. It's connected to the rainy season. Aquarius is connected to the rain in the Middle East. That ends by the end of that month. And it gives us the birthday of the trees because this is how we calculate which fruit that are going to grow from the trees belong to which year, which is important to us, to the temple, a tithe of the growth of the trees, right? So it's the month of water, Shvat. It's also the month of Asher, which means happiness. It's like a prayer that there'll be abundant water, abundant rain, so that food could grow in the spring in the land of Israel, and happiness will spread throughout the land. Okay, one more. Benjamin. Benjamin is blessed by Yaakov, is blessed by Jacob in this week's Torah portion as the warrior, the archer, the Keshet, the Sagittarius. Now why? Why Benjamin, Sagittarius? You have to have in mind the way the tribes were divided in the land of Israel. Benjamin had a land that was very narrow and was from the Mediterranean Sea to the Jordan and beyond. So he was going, west to east, east to west. He was an east-west piece of land that was like that. And he was following what's called the Transjordan Highway of the Middle East, of those time, right, of ancient times, which was also crossed by the northeast highway, the northeast corridor that came from Assyria and went all the way to Egypt. So the land itself looks like the arc of a bow, and the arrow going through it like this. The land itself is the image of the archer. And that's why he was connected to Sagittarius. It's the month of Kislev, which is the month of the darkness, the month of the festival, the holidays of light, right? It's the month of the solstice oftentimes. It's like just like Benjamin is the crossroad of the east-west Transjordan highway and the north-south highway, so is the month of Kislev a crossroad between the times of darkness, moving as an arrow pointed towards the light. And we are making this transition today. Now, in case you're not convinced yet, I can imagine, but it's not just in the Torah that we see those incredible connection with the zodiac. We see it even beyond the Torah. And I'm not going to name all the places, but one of the places that was the most striking to me was in the book of Ezekiel. Now, before I get to explain to you what happens in Ezekiel, I got to let you know that Scorpio, the month of Scorpio, was not always represented by a scorpion. And the reason for that is Scorpio is the month that is the end of October and through November. So it's the month where we're entering more and more into the darkness. It's a month that was raising a lot of fear in us. And to have a scorpion, which is the sign of death, as the symbol for that month, people didn't like that. So oftentimes, instead of the image of a scorpion, we use the image of an eagle. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now I'm back to Ezekiel. Ezekiel had a vision. Ezekiel had the vision of the chariot. And the vision of the divine chariot was that incredible image. We don't exactly know what the chariot looked like. We know that it had 4 wheels, and next to each of the wheels were angelic beings. And each of the 4 angelic beings was created with a different head. One of the angelic beings' head was a lion, one was a bull, one was an eagle, and one was the head of a man. Now the sages our sages know full well what this denotes. Each of those four happen to be the central month, right, in each of the four quadrants. Each of the four quadrants of the zodiac, there are 3 months, right? And each one of the 4 beings represents the central month in each of the quadrants. I'm going to start with the bull, which, is starting with a month with a spring quadrant. The bull is the Taurus. Then you have the lion, which is Leo. Then you have the eagle, which is Scorpio. And then you have the man, which is Aquarius. So the vision of Ezekiel might have more to do with the symbols of the zodiac than I ever knew. What I love about this is that it adds yet, if possible, another dimension of possibility of interpretation of what our sages were trying to convey to us, those who wrote those texts. It also points to one thing that we've known forever, is that you can never, ever believe that these texts have to be interpreted at the literal level. That is not the purpose they were written for. I mean, those 12 songs are carrying the energies of those signs, right? They are there to convey certain human traits that are universal. Those stories are not to be taken literally. Clearly, those who wrote those texts were trying to tell us that through those stories, we were pointing you towards the transcendental, the celestial, the heavenly. And to me, it's just fascinating. Maybe it's only me, but I know. That's why I get to do this. It's exciting. So clearly there is more to Jacob's blessing of his sons that meet the untrained eye. There are layers upon layers that we can discover by going against what my rabbis told me when I was in the yeshiva. Because what I found was that quote that I gave you earlier, that my rabbis told me, En Mazal LeIsrael, is one quote in the tractate of Shabbat in the Talmud that is being taken completely out of context to send a clear message to the rest of us that we are not to deal with astrology or whatever this is. It's so out of context that it ignores the fact that it is one sentence in a sea of conversation where rabbis argue back and forth, in fact, for and against, and how to deal with the zodiac. And in fact, I found, by continuing my research, that until very recently, those practices were common currency in our tradition. There's one rabbi whose yahrzeit we celebrate tonight, who opposed it in the 12th century of the Common Era, and that was Maimonides. He's the only one who says anything about it, and who says anything about it against it, which means everybody was doing it, because he had to say something for us to stop. But he's the only one. I just find that fascinating. So this is the blessing of Jacob. And this is the night of blessing. This is the night of blessing each other. This is the night of blessing a year that was. And when we bless what was, we bless all that was, saying amen to it having been exactly as it was. That's really hard. We bless a year that was, never wishing it had been any different than it was. we say Amen to 2018. And the only way we can let it go, if we let it be, is if we let it be exactly as it was, with its dark moments and its bright moments. And we bless one another with the masculine energies of the Kabbalah, the masculine and feminine energies of the Kabbalah, all of us covered by the wings of the Shekhinah.